This is Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy. It's a show that I've watched for some years, and I was delighted to discover that Michael actually lives in Tucson. I was watching a video, and he said, "I'm a Tucsonian," and whoa, I thought that's great. And so Michael's going to be here June 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. to discuss the reliability of the New Testament. And would you like to talk a little bit about what you're going to cover?
So yeah, we're going to talk a lot about just a general overview of some of the data that would support the reliability of the New Testament that a lot of people just aren't aware of. You know, we hear a lot in the culture that these are copies of copies of copies of copies that have been translated and rewritten over time, and so we have no idea what the originals were. Well, that's not really what's going on in scholarship. There's a lot of good evidence that would argue that we know what the early church believed. We know the New Testament has not been altered that much, and even the changes or variations between the manuscripts boil down to spelling errors or variations in Greek vocabulary.
Right.
Late changes that wouldn't really affect early manuscripts. There's a lot of good evidence that supports the reliability of the New Testament. So we're going to look at that.
Right.
We're also going to look at how we know that the authors of the Gospels were Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We're going to look at some internal evidence, why we can make good arguments as to why the New Testaments are not mythical inventions or works of fiction. They're likely ancient Greco-Roman biographies trying to record real historical events about the life of Jesus.
And I've watched several of your videos on Inspiring Philosophy on YouTube. I've watched a series on the reliability of the New Testament. I found it incredibly insightful, well researched. Tell me your talk on June 19th, Saturday night, what this might have to offer, because there's going to be a range of people. Like, I grew up a pastor's son. From my very earliest memories, I was in church listening to scripture. I got a bachelor's degree in theology. But even so, as I aged and grew, I had a period of time where I needed to challenge what I had learned, because I went to grad school, I went into the sciences. And so there are some people who are going to have been maybe going to church, calling themselves Christians for a long time, but there could be others who come and they had a different background, maybe even a secular upbringing, and they're curious about these books. So what might you have to offer to both audiences?
So what we're going to have to offer is basically a lot of good information, a lot of data points from different areas that's going to support the overall reliability of the New Testament. So if you're new to this, you're going to get a lot of good data you can use in conversations with your friends or family that can support the reliability of the New Testament. If you're aware of some of this, I will give you, hopefully, some new information you've not heard that doesn't get thrown around a lot in popular media, but it is discussed among scholars that's also going to support. I can talk about some of the recent work done by Craig Keener, some book that supports the reliability of Acts that you may not have heard in a lot of popular media, or maybe from other apologists who don't discuss it. So there's a lot of interesting data we can use, but it's not going to, you don't need a degree to understand a lot of this, but it will be some good information that is used by scholars.
Yeah, and you're, in some respects, you're an apologist, and can you explain what an apologist is? It's obviously not saying you're sorry, but what is apologetics, and why is that important to people today, whether they're just starting out a journey into looking at the Bible and Scripture and the Judeo-Christian God, or if they've been in that tradition for a long time?
So apologetics comes from an ancient Greek term referring to give an answer for something. So an apologist provides answers. Answers, basically, it's our job to defend the Bible, the Christian worldview, why God exists, these types of things. And so we study a lot of different aspects around the Bible, natural theology, and we give answers to help people better understand why the book is written this way, or what is the cultural context of the biblical world. Why would they word it this way? What is the evidence to support it? So that's what an apologist does, and that's what we do, is we try to do a lot of detailed research to try to provide answers for people.
That's great. And I've heard and read before that a lot of young people leave their faith, and one of the biggest reasons mentioned is they don't feel like the churches have good explanations. They're not able to answer a lot of their questions. And I think what you're bringing, and a lot of what Viva Freedom Talk is going to bring, is a good basis for critical thinking, a good defense for what you believe in, and a good rational explanation. I don't think it's necessarily, proving anything, because proof ultimately comes down to a relationship with the God that you study. You look at Scripture, you read, you understand. Ultimately, you have to have a relationship. But I think it's also extremely important to understand the underpinnings of what you're following. For me, when I went from that bachelor's degree in English and theology to a Master of Science degree, I found that there were questions that I didn't have answers to based on my upbringing. So I think what you're doing is very important. We're very much looking forward to your talk. I also like the fact that we can go to your YouTube page, and maybe you can give the URL for that, but expand upon these topics, because you put a lot of work into that.
Yeah, the YouTube channel is youtube.com/inspiringphilosophy.
Mm-hmm.
I also post all my videos at facebook.com/inspiringphilosophy. Right now I'm going through a lot of stuff related to the Old Testament. I'm about to do a series on the Mosaic Law. I've done a lot on the archaeology of the Old Testament, some more on that coming out soon. So there's a lot of topics I try to cover. And yeah, apologetics is not about providing proofs for people, because everyone is technically an apologist for their own worldview.
Yeah.
Everyone has a worldview, and you are an apologist for that worldview. And so we've just been convinced by the evidence for the Christian worldview, and we try to provide the data to support it.
Right, exactly. And I think that, what is the scripture that says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind? And I think sometimes that philosophical aspect, or the scholarship or studying, gets put aside. And I think what John Lennox said about faith is very important, that faith does involve substantiation, and faith does involve proof. It's not blind. So tell me just a little bit before we close on this lead-up interview here, the importance of what you do, the philosophy, the scholarship, to being someone who is a believer in Christianity or Judaism as well.
So the one thing we all want is we want truth. We want to be on the side of truth. We want our worldview to be based on facts, not just on feelings. So people often go, well, how do I know the Bible's true? How do I know God exists? So what we do is we show the evidence to support that worldview. We provide the evidence that shows that you believe this not because it just feels good, or it's like a medicine that just makes you feel better. It's because this is actually the way the reality is. This is the truth of reality. And so we present the data. We don't force it on anyone. We don't tell people how to think. We present the data and go, here's what we think is the most logical explanation. You decide. So that's what the job of the apologist should be. And what we should do is present the data to support the worldview, help people to better critically think.
We're just going to get a little taste of that next Saturday, and I understand you'll have some time for question and answers as well.
I always have time for Q&A. Yeah.
Okay, great. And we'll talk a little bit about Michael's YouTube channel. Do you want to give us the URL for that? I can put it up on the screen when I edit this as well.
youtube.com/inspiringphilosophy, and my website is inspiringphilosophy.org.
Great. Well, thank you, Michael, and we really appreciate that you're going to come here to our humble little coffee shop and talk about something very important, and I hope all of you out there will consider coming. And I think having some young people here will be very important too, because one thing we want to do through Viva Freedom Talk is let young people know that there is scholarship, there are good explanations, and ultimately it's yours to decide what worldview you're going to take. But I think following the evidence where it leads and getting some good scholarly information is very important. So thank you. We look forward to it.
Thanks for having me.